Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In today's podcast, we are going to be speaking with Rupert Holloway from Conker Gin. Rupert's a top guy, has been producing some amazing gin for the past 4 years. And we talk about all sorts of stuff. Rupert has an incredible eye for detail. So we chat about why, if you don't want to stick a candle in it, it's not good enough. I'll leave you to listen to work out what we're talking about. We talk about why gin used to be considered to be safer than water. An incredible collaboration that Rupert's just started with the RNLI. The nostalgia of playing Conkers as a kid, and the kind of the great memories that just that word Conker brings up, and even how giving away a bottle of gin led to an inflatable balloon animal spider and a random phone call from chef Marco Pierre White. So we cover a few topics, it's safe to say. I very much hope you enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much. Rupert, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to come in. I know it's a crazy busy time of the year, so thank you for taking some time out of your busy day. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Pleasure to have you, Mark.
Good, thank you. So we are at Conker Spirit HQ, in essence. Can you just describe where we are, how we got here? Just a little bit about Conker, your brief intro.
Yeah, well, quite amazingly, actually, we're sitting around a conference table with a Conker branded conference table. We look quite professional.
It's really very cool, actually. Yeah,
but,
I'll get a photo.
If you were here, literally last Christmas, this little room was filled with just secondhand desks, and 4 of us working away. And in the time, in that space of the year, we've built another little office. We've got another unit, so we've got a proper bottling line with proper equipment and about 8 people in the team now. So Conker is basically the ever moving beast, but it's brilliant.
Amazing. So how many years?
So the first bottle was sold in April 15, but the building I just walked you around downstairs, that was a lease I took out in November 14. So
okay,
I did my day job in April 14. So it's
right.
I don't know.
4 years.
I've lost track.
It's 20 years, Rupert. That's how long you've been doing it.
Exactly.
How long does it feel? That should be a better question. Is it gone like a blink of an eye?
Yeah, exactly. It does completely feel like a blink of an eye. And and I remember when I left my day job in April 14, and then it took a whole year to get it sort of approved by the HMRC, all the packaging and everything finished. And I remember saying to people, it's taken so long, and it's been an awful wait, and quite painful wait for me, because obviously it's a massive risk and what have you. But everyone else was like, "That's really fast. What are you talking about? That's lightning speed to go from basically handing your notice in as a chartered surveyor and going, I'm not doing that anymore, and then a year later being owning a gin distillery. It's bonkers.
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
Yeah.
And if you'd has it gone as you planned? If you take yourself back to when you first thought of doing this and you'd fast forwarded, would you have seen yourself here in 4 years' time? Or did you not really have an expectation?
It's way exceeded. Yeah, I think we did like my year 5 kind of numbers in like the end of the second year. Okay. So that's probably partly because I cast really kind of reserved projections, thought, this is all I needed to do really to replace my day job. Okay. And that's really all I wanted. I just wanted it to not be employed. Right. I wanted Conker to employ me and pay me. Yeah. But now it employs 8 people and, does all this stuff. So it's definitely exceeded expectations. Yeah. And I'd say actually the most significant thing it's done is people's opinion of us and how people talk about us. Yeah. And and the spread of Conker, and you go walking into a bar in London and seeing someone order it.
Yeah, nice.
It's mad. It's quite mad.
And that name, so I think Conker, it's a great name, I think, because I think for most of us, just the word conquer is a really nostalgic kind of word. As soon as you hear conkers, you kind of think back to school and kind of playing with your mates and that kind of stuff. Do you think that's been part of it, around the brand and the story as well as the product? Or
yeah, I think I'm a big believer that the liquid has to be great, because then people will come back. And obviously people have come back, so I think that the gin's good. But the every part of a brand, I think, needs to just be like delicious and like you want to just take it home. So I kind of take this like design led approach, and I've got this thing: if you don't want to stick a candle in it, then it's not good enough. Like it's just, these bottles can't end up in the bin. And the name was complete like accident, complete serendipity, but it was, as soon as I saw it, and it just fit, because like you say, it's that perfect nostalgic word, and also it's like repurposing a word as well. So it's like it was almost a bit of a dead word in a way. For an adult, when would you ever say conker? Pretty much never. So it kind of repurposes word.
It's like a lot of the best things that you see. Once I've become very familiar with it over the years. But it's one of those ones where you think, why don't I see that more? Why is that word not being used
Seems obvious.
more often? Which is the way with some of the best brands, I think, isn't it? You think, it's a really good, really clever, really simple name. But you're right. Every time I hear it, I don't know, you hear Conker and you just puts a smile on your face, not just because it's a great gin, but
literally,
drink enough of it and you'll smile anyway.
Yeah, it sounds good. It's that 2-syllable thing. It also writes really well. So when you write it down in capital letters, it looks really strong. Yeah. But as I say, it was complete.
Where did it come from? Where was the inspiration?
Complete accident. So when I was a miserable chartered surveyor, and me and Emily, my now wife, had basically made a commitment for me to leave my day job, because I was just miserable, Monday morning grump, basically.
How long did you do it?
A long time. So 7 years. So I went back to uni. I did biology initially, then went back to uni and did construction so I could convert my degree. And then I did 7 years to the point where I got chartered, which is like this RICS thing. And basically came out the other side of that and just saw my career and just thought, is that really what I'm gonna do? And early midlife kind of moment, really.
That was quite young to do that. At least you did that quickly.
Yeah.
Did you always?
I hope it wasn't my midlife crisis. If it was, no. I've got days left.
Yeah. Although let's hope you just got it out of the way really early. You're not going to have another one. Because although that might be quite cool. Imagine what the next business could be when you wake up one day and go, oh God, I'm bored of Conker. Then you can create something else in Vents. But hey, so
we haven't quite got to the Conker story, have we?
No, we're not there. No, go on, carry on.
So I kept texting Emily business ideas, and they were all completely assassinated by Emily, very swiftly put to bed. And then I texted her one day, hi darling, I hope you're well. By the way, I think we should make gin, launch Dorset's first gin distillery. And she texts back within about 2 minutes, just 2 words, one word, acorn, and then conker.
Really?
So I basically text back a question mark saying, what are you talking about? You've lost your mind.
Have you been drinking gin?
Yeah, already on it. And then she was a school teacher just down the road here at Stoughfield, and was basically writing a list for what she was going to do with her classroom that day, but just in the text box. So it was really bizarre. And then she just sent that in reply to my text. And then I replied immediately, actually, that's an amazing word. Really, really. So it's completely random, and I wouldn't make that story up because it's painfully boring. But it is where So within 10 minutes, we had this word, which, as you say, is like perfect. And we didn't have to pay some agency to dream up.
It's serendipity. I'm a big believer that the kind of universe works in mysterious ways, and if these things are meant to be, then things happen. So.
I've actually found with Conker that a lot of it's feels like it's just landed in front of me, which is a bit like you were saying. How did I come across this building? Yeah, and then how our neighbours moving out, we've been able to expand where we are in Southbourne. Sometimes I just think, what if that hadn't happened? What if I hadn't had this building? And it would probably be a very different story. But I think that's when you put yourself in a position, when you put yourself out there, it actually does all does all kind of unfold in front of you because you kind of make things happen really sometimes.
I think it's just taking that, it's that cliche, but you've got to take that first step, haven't you?
Yeah.
There's an inevitability about it. I get involved with new projects and done a number of stuff over the years. And I almost know now that once I take that kind of first step, there's an inevitability of everything else. I might have no idea about how it's going to pan out and whether it's going to work, but I just know as soon as you can kind of see it in your head, you just go, well, look, whatever crops up, I'll deal with it. Whatever opportunity, whichever way the turn goes. And you just start. I think
you're kind of making yourself available, aren't you?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
For an opportunity. So I suppose people have opportunities are put in front of people all the time, but they're perhaps not in the mindset to actually seize upon it.
100%.
So like running a business is basically making yourself available.
Yeah, and making a decision.
And bad, I guess.
Yeah, and it's that, it's that paralysis of analysis. I think, I often look at things and go, right, okay, most people probably wouldn't take this opportunity because they'll analyze it, they'll think about it. There's an inevitable risk. And you get to that point of risk, which is where most people will probably go, okay, I'm going to think about this a little bit more, and then years disappear. And I think the entrepreneur's job is to kind of go, okay, I'm actually just going to take the step. And it's almost like multiple first steps. It's like, okay, I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I'm just going to take the next step. And it becomes inevitable, which I think is exciting. So, with regards to gin, do you remember your first gin? Were you a gin drinker as a kid? Is it something you've thought about?
There's quite... I think so. Fred, who joined the team pretty much months after I launched Conker, me and him used to get through a bottle of Bombay Sapphire as in our late teens.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was our kind of tipple of a weekend and what have you, which I think was probably unusual actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Given that would have been, I don't even know when that would have been, but basically pre-gin.
Yeah,
cool.
Before the boom.
Gin cool.
Yeah.
So it had a taste for it, but I never paint the kind of marketing spin that I was this frustrated gin connoisseur who always wanted to make his own gin. It was just the fact that I actually really like food and really good beers and wines and have a palate for it. Not that I'd kind of known before doing Conker, but as soon as I started going down that road, I realised I had a really cracking palate and was able to distill. I was able to pull out different botanical flavours and work out a good recipe. Okay. But obviously, as a quantity surveyor, you don't really know you've got that.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So you literally come up with the idea. Your now wife says yes, great.
Yeah.
That's when most people would have kind of forgotten about it and gone on to the next 20.
And open a bottle of gin.
Yeah. Just kind of let's just drink this one.
Yeah.
Where do you go? I mean, you presumably had to just go off and research. Did you know how to make gin at the time? Did you know the process? Was it literally a kind of like this is an idea, start from scratch?
Yeah, I'd watched. I struggled to remember the exact gin light bulb. I remember being in the mindset of finding a new career or my own thing. So I was making myself available, like we were saying, to new ideas. And I watched a YouTube video by an American guy who sort of quit his job. Or no, not quit his job, retired probably as a wealthy solicitor. It was a bit different to my story, but he then invested all that into a gin distillery. And it was a beautiful YouTube video of this massive stills, and I just thought, that'd be amazing. Right. And then I did some sniffing around at the UK and discovered what Sipsmith were doing in London. But even so, like Sipsmith at the time, you couldn't even get Sipsmith down here. It was still Bombay and Gordon's, and maybe the odd bar had Sipsmith, but it was still really early on. And I just thought, if I could just pick up Sipsmith operation and dump it in Southbourne and do it our way, I just couldn't see how anyone would turn that away. It was just one of those ideas that I just thought, if I don't do it, someone else will. And that's quite a powerful motivator.
Huge, terrifying sometimes for me because I get stuff stuck in my head and I think somebody's now I've had that idea. There must be hundreds of people who are thinking about it, and you end up rushing ahead, and then
there's
you realise,
a compulsion to
nobody
do it.
Nobody was thinking about it. Although in your case, to be fair, there was a few people kind of not too far behind you, I suppose. But just to count, so you decide you're going to do it. Is it then literally a case of do you just try distilling some at home, or do you go straight for the kind of commercial production, or did you have a little test first to see if you were any good at it? Did you make any crap gin?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, hopefully not anymore.
Way back when.
So I just took the kind of approach that anything can be learnt, and that nothing's impossible, and it is just a recipe. It's just flavors. So I bought a little 1.5 litre pot still, which is the same as what we used now, but just on a tiny scale. And then start at the beginning. I knew the kind of profile of the gin, so I knew I wanted it to be classic in style, which means it's like a London Dry. but then I would sort of bolt on these Dorset flavours that give it sort of local character. So I just started trying to distill a London Dry.
This is literally in your kitchen? Or?
Yeah, so literally my kitchen. And because it was always going to be a genuine, bona fide business, I got the HMRC to license my kitchen as a little, for the purposes of recipe development.
Okay. Is that hard or?
It's basically a paperwork thing. And it was hard in the sense that when the HMRC actually came to license this premises, they'd never been in a distillery before. Really? So it was the lady who was part of the, because it was in the southwest or whatever, they hadn't seen a distillery for, 100 years or something. Wow. So I was kind of suddenly realised I was the one who knew all about the distillery.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
You just told them sign here.
Yeah,
so trust me, it's all lovely.
Yeah, so I mean, they knew what they had to do from a legal perspective, but they'd actually never set foot in a distillery, which I thought was amazing. But in terms of so the hardest thing about getting my kitchen license was the fact that it was a rented house.
Wow. Okay. Right, luckily, did you tell the landlord?
Yeah, I did. I asked the landlord, and he amazingly, again, it's all thanks to everyone else really, but amazingly he said, yeah, no problem, because he was a friend from an old work colleague.
Right.
And I kind of like to think we rewarded him by putting, you see on the bottle, you've got these coordinates either side of the label.
Yeah.
Those coordinates on the Dorset Dry are the house that it all started at.
Nice.
So if you could just turn up at his house.
Turn up at his house and go,
start demanding
the
gin.
Okay.
And then the coffee liqueur that we launched 2 years later, because that was developed at this address, those are the coordinates are here. And the RNLI gin is the RNLI headquarters in Poole, and the port barrel is the port house in Portugal.
And do you tell that story anywhere else? Is it on your website? Is that one of those
we
subtle
don't really
sort of
tell it,
in
no.
the know things?
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. I must admit, I haven't seen your bottle, hundreds and hundreds of times. I suppose if I'd thought about it, maybe I'd made the link, but I just haven't thought about it. Just
so he proudly tells his buddies in the pub, that's where that all started in my house.
That's really cool, isn't
it?
Yeah. Okay. So you perfect the recipe in your house and then go, okay, this is actually a good product. Is that how it worked to actually then go?
Yeah, I did carry on the progress with the business, just thinking the recipe we will sort out the recipe. So while that was all happening, I was sort of developing the physical brand in terms of its design and everything else in the background, like getting your website, securing all the kind of copyright on the brand, and working out how you get hold of a glass bottle and talking to the HMRC. So alongside the recipe development was everything else.
That's good. Yeah. Nice to have that confidence that you knew you'd nail the product.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a product at a gin. I mean, the gin was going to get made.
Yeah, good to have that confidence.
Yeah.
So you decide you're going to do it, and then it's presumably a case of funding and premises, I suppose. Is it? Was it? Is it an expensive thing to get started? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways you can set up a gin distillery, and when a gin distillery just pops out of nowhere and they've got these big stills and everything is shiny, they've had a lot of zeros in their bank balance to be able to do that, because that's literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, and that's something we're hoping to do, the next couple of years, and we've been around for 3 years. So I did it the other way, and that was from complete shoestring. We got a 30-litre still, so we could make, in one batch we could do about 40 bottles. I was hand labeling bottles. And the biggest commitment was the 3-year lease on the building downstairs. And that was, so although it is expensive, you can do it in an incredibly shoestring way. And it takes, tens of thousands of pounds. But for starting a business, that's probably pretty standard. So I started with a startup loan from the government. So that's one of those business loans, low interest sort of loans. And then a £10,000 grant from the Dorset Growth Hub, which was basically if we create 2 or 3 jobs over 2 or 3 years, they basically give you £10,000, which we managed to get. So that involved writing a business plan and doing all the projections. And at a time when I thought my time was perhaps better placed, like finding a premises and telling everyone about the gin, I was at home writing the business plan, which was tricky. I remember that being, but it was a means to an end, because you didn't have any money to pour into it.
Yeah. So it wasn't that you had a few £100,000, but wanted to do it in a small way.
How am I going to spend all this money?
Yeah. I know. I'll just start really small.
Yeah. And, no, it was complete. Yeah.
So through necessity.
There was no savings or, second home I could sell.
Right.
It was a case of I sold my car, which raised about £6,000. I had a couple of credit cards, and then that £20,000 through loan and grant, and basically crept across the line.
Okay.
And then when we could afford to buy 2 pallets of bottles rather than just one, and when we could afford to buy a little semi-automatic labeler that had a little, when I say semi-automatic, I mean like a little handle rather than just sticking it on by hand, a little roller handle. And then, we've just, that's how we operate today, actually. When we can afford it, we upgrade.
Were you, I use the word terrified, but, were you scared of failure at that point, or were you pretty relaxed about how it was going to pan out? I mean, selling your car and walking everywhere and giving up a reasonably paid job, and it's a lot of years of learning. Yeah. Were you utterly confident, or was it a kind of, I'm just going to take a punt?
Yeah, it's a funny one. Because people do say, that was really brave to do that. And every time people say that, I kind of think, it doesn't feel brave at the time. You just, because your mindset is shifted from, to me, staying in the day job, that's brave. Actually, just what am I going to do? Just keep my head down for the rest of my life and just, be miserable. And also, what is the risk? Because at the time, I didn't have a mortgage. That lasted about 1.5 years. And then I didn't have any children. Again, that lasted about 1 year.
Yeah.
So I could have walked back and as a quantity surveyor, very easily. In fact, probably still now, if they're still listening, they would have me back if I, had to pay the mortgage. If it all went wrong. And so people kind of pin, it's like that. You say you have the idea and then you justify not pursuing it. And often it's, you will tell yourself not to do something even if it's not actually logical, because normally the risk isn't, there's especially if you've kind of worked in a career and you've built up experience, that doesn't just go up in smoke.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. And no, I guess it's that comfort of having something to go back on. I was the same, to be fair, when I started. Yeah, no kids, not married, and no mortgage. So it is easier, I think, isn't it? You kind of, I was always very relaxed. I remember having to sign personal guarantees for everything I did, and I was kind of like, look, I'll sign whatever you like. I don't own anything. It's just literally anything I have is on credit or rented. Yeah. Same thing. Everything's on credit card. Yeah. I remember getting a 20 grand loan for a car and then not buying a car with it because nobody was really checking. Yeah. And just trying to accumulate some cash. So I think you've got to, I like to call them little white lies, really, isn't it? Rather than blatant lies. But you've got to be a bit creative with finding cash, I think. But it's that kind of fallback position for me was the same. It's like, if need be, I'll go and get a job. Yeah. So has it become kind of less, if you weren't scared anyway, but you become increasingly confident, or does the market shift and pivot enough that it's still a bit of a roller coaster?
It's definitely. I don't think you ever feel particularly safe. Like I'm confident that Conker has found a place in people's hearts, and it's actually, would take something pretty miraculous for it all to go wrong. I think, but we don't rest on our laurels at all. So this year has been about massively reinvesting in our packaging and our offering and our products, and we're investing into our space and people and. Because if you just think, oh, well, we'll just keep on smashing out what we've been doing and let people come to us, you'll soon, there'll be a rude awakening. But I don't think you ever, that kind of cliche of, oh, you've made it, I don't think it actually holds true. I think it's more, you perhaps get over the brow of startup, like uphill startup, no one really knows you, and then actually start people recommending you, and your name, your brand is a name in conversation, and then it perhaps has organic growth rather than just your sweat and blood and tears to grow it. So I'd like to think we're just over that crest.
Good. And that first, so going back to that, to the story, I guess. So that first kind of bottle you needed to sell, was it you? I think I remember you coming into the hotels and the restaurants, personally, and going, definitely, I've made this. Is that how it got off the ground? Was it literally sort of, person to person, mouth to mouth? Or?
Yeah. So so from leaving my day job to selling the first bottle was 1 year. We probably had about well, even when the recipe wasn't completed, I was sending off recipes 2, 3, and 4 to like Selfridges for them to try out, and basically really open book saying, this is what we're doing. It'd be great to have you involved in trialing the recipes and stuff. But basically by the time we were licensed to sell, we had customers all lined up. So, we had bottles going off. So one of the first batch went off to Urban Beach. So one of the first bottles, and then the same to like the Chewton Glen and...
Nice that we're in the same sentence there. I appreciate
yeah, exactly.
everything.
Yeah,
Urban Beach and Chewton Glen. We're normally the deliveries in consecutive.
Yeah, those hotels,
sometimes they go there first.
You can get those hotels mixed up.
Easily done.
The wrong
Easily
one.
done.
Yeah. So although you could have seen that year of not being able to sell, and I was literally going to food fairs and just giving away little samples of gin. That's quite a painful experience in a way, but it was building up an audience. So by the time we started selling, that 60 bottle, I think we did 60 bottles in the first week. 2 went off to this wine shop, bottle went down to Urban Beach, and they just disappeared. And it was like that for selling everything we could make for at least 2 years.
Wow.
And then we were able to make a bit more and have a bit of safety net.
Well, when you showed me around then, I was just impressed to see you've actually got a bit of stock on the shelf. So it's not instantaneously. You're not behind anymore.
It's not. There's no horrible moments of thinking you might let people down. Actually, we never did actually, but it was just, all right, we've got a bottle through the night kind of thing.
So if you stopped making, how much stock have you got? How long would you last if you stopped producing today?
Not long.
No, a few days or?
Well, no, I think with Christmas and November just kick off, and you do like most of your business, so like a third of your business in November and December. So you wouldn't might last long now, but yeah, we into the spring now, we would probably be okay.
That's good. And then January comes and everybody stops.
Exactly. Yeah.
Drinking for a few weeks, which is always a challenge.
Yeah.
So I don't know too much about the gin sector, but I guess as you were alluding to earlier, when you started, there wasn't a lot of these small producers. You had the big guys, the kind of international brands, I suppose.
Yeah.
Did it used to be, is it like other trades? Did there used to be lots of little distilleries and lots of little gin makers and they just disappeared? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the story goes that there was, a gin still in every house in London back in the kind of gin lane kind of days. And I think basically back in the day, it was a case of the water that came out I'm going to say came out of the taps, probably not even out of the taps, but it was just so polluted and dirty that basically most people drank beer or spirits.
Right. Good times.
Yeah, because beer, having a bit of alcohol in there, sterilised any nasties in the water. And then it all got a bit out of hand, I think, and then basically the government basically licensed only 2 or 3 distilleries, or made the entry fee to do it so extremely high that only 2 or 3 could possibly do it, and that was the status quo for hundreds of years. With the same way that 10 years ago there would have been maybe 3 or 4 brands that would pop up in your head if you were to think of gin. Everyone from Greenall's to Bombay's a relatively new brand, but Gordon's and the like, Beefeater, and I think now it's exploded just because of the. If you give people choice, then there's a gin for everyone, isn't there? Everyone can have their own personal discovery and their own personal taste.
So what was the trigger for that change? Was there some sort of legislative change, or?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I think it strings back to Gordon Brown lifting this kind of prohibitive sort of restriction on still sizes. So I think up to a certain time that you had to have a still that was so big, which made it completely cost prohibitive for any new brand to join the market. So I think that was lifted, and I think Sipsmith then, got involved and were the first in London to do that. I think they were the first gin distillery in a couple of hundred years in the city. It sprang from that really. I mean, the barriers to entry, they're just not there now from a legislatively perspective. It's more, just like any other business now, like finding wrestling for space.
Yeah. So you seem to hit that sweet spot because 4 years ago, probably, the gin revolution, so to speak, I suppose, had started, but it was early days. Is that, you've seen that presumably gather momentum? Do you feel like you were fortunate and you just timed it bang on?
Yeah. I mean, it was very fortunate. I mean, short of actually being first in the country, that would have been nice. But yeah, we there were probably, when we launched it, probably like 10 or 15 sort of proper gin distillery, gin brands that I was looking at the time, thinking, God, if only I could be big as these guys. Now they're probably, best part of 200 or 300, I would have thought, in the UK. There aren't so many actual distilleries, and I think that's like a key thing that we shout about, is that we're the real deal. You know, we distill it and bottle it and label it all in house, and there's very few that actually distill it themselves. There's even fewer that actually go to the length of bottling it themselves as well. So we kind of like to think we do, I don't think we're kind of sadists in that way, but it just makes it proper craft, in my opinion, that we're the real deal.
So that kind of leads into my question, I suppose, as to why do people care? This is this thing, the whole point we're having this conversation is that I think it's really important that people hear the stories of the artisans and the craftspeople, and the amount of love and passion that goes into a product. And we'll come to that in a minute with regards to the actual ingredients you use. But why it seems that people didn't care probably 10 years ago, whether it was just through lack of choice. But these things must coexist, I guess. The A choice or B choice, demand or choice, whichever way around it comes. But why do people want to buy from the little guy, do you think?
I think there's a whole ream of things. I think the internet firstly has created that consumer because it's like enabled choice. So, 15, 20 years ago, the only brands we knew about were put through our TVs or radios or broadsheets or billboards. And so we just had no means of exploring our alternatives. So the internet has kind of enabled brands like me to exist, because we can physically reach our customer without, on pennies basically, and it allows people to Google and scope out and be kind of early adopters of interesting things and tell their mates. So there's just that kind of ability to be unique and find out stuff. And then I'm a bit of a, maybe it's the cynic in me, but I think we're all there's a lot of meaningless stuff out there. And I think it's all about finding, fundamentally, like why people associate with brands. I think it's about finding meaning and associating yourself with a brand that can tell the world what you're like. Same way why you'd wear a certain clothes or drive a certain car. I think it's just, people know that there's a small team behind Conker. They know it's bottled in Southbourne. They know the gorse forage from the cliff tops. It's the complete antidote to, Gordon's Gin, which is, a multinational, multi-billion-pound organisation. And we like being that kind of providing that alternative, really.
And do you think so? I was chatting to Steve from 8 Hearts before around the fact that the brewers cotton onto this quite quickly, and they see what's happening in the craft market, and they start to use words like craft, and there's no official legislation around defining craft, and whether is it the same in the gin market? Are the big guys kind of scared of what's happening? Are they starting to rebrand and repackage and tell the story a little bit more?
Yeah. I take a lot of joy from exposing kind of false craft gins. Just when I go around, like, if I'm at an event and I start talking to one, and I say, oh, so, are you the distiller? And they nod, and I say, oh, so where do you get this distilled? And they sort of mumble under their breath. Because this craft, and also this word small batch as well, and they'll say small batch, and it might well genuinely be a small batch gin, but it's made on the same stills that make Greenall's gin. So yes, a small batch, but it's a bit disingenuous, isn't it, really? So I think it will actually come from the consumer. We found at our events that the consumer is getting very clever on what constitutes gin, what is a proper, so they ask us, are you the distillery, or, all this sort of stuff, So I think and it was very important from day one, from my perspective, when I was setting up Conker, to be the distillery. It would have been very easy, relatively, to have just launched a gin, had someone develop the recipe for me. They've got all the HMRC licenses. You tomorrow could go to one of these big third-party white labeling gin manufacturers and probably about 6 weeks later put a gin on the shelves. And you might have some sort of early success, but then people will start digging and they'll be like, oh, so you're not a distillery, and you're not, oh, okay, so tell me about how you came across this recipe. And you're like, well, I wrote a description, I asked basically someone to do it for me. So that whole craft, small batch, it's it's paraded around a lot, and actually it's not always what it seems.
Yeah, that's my concern, I guess. And the reason for having these conversations is I think it's about making people conscious, I suppose. And I don't mind where people buy their stuff and what they buy their stuff. I have an opinion on it, and I know what I would prefer. But hopefully the more people become educated, the more they will ask these questions, because I'm always nervous that the big brands have got, they've got massive budgets. They can access the designers and the website, and they start to use the words and the terminology and even the artwork they start to use. They can so cleverly, artificially make it look like, they're doing the same as the rest of the sector.
I think Tesco are pretty good at this, actually. You go into Tesco and you'll pick up a product and you think, oh, this looks good. And you look really carefully, and it's like, packaged for Tesco, written in small print. You think, wow, that genuinely looks like a new artisan brand. I think, so I kind of say that in my head, this is what happens. In my head, Diageo, who own obviously one of probably the biggest companies in the world, they get around a table, all their marketing executives, and they say, how can we appear more like Conker?
Yes, I'm sure that's what they're saying. Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, not literally, but basically, how can we appear small, independent, innovative, genuine, rooted in a culture or in a local community? So you can use all the buzzwords and you can have all the best design packaging, but fundamentally, if you're not inherently authentic, I think you'll be caught out. And also, the consumer's very clever, and they only need to have a quick Google and find these things out. So, and that's what I love about marketing Conker, is that we use transparency in our favor. So I use this kind of strapline that our marketing is transparency. So we just turn the camera on ourselves. We don't have to conjure up a story, whereas Diageo have to conjure up something. Whereas we go, oh, look what we've been doing today. And we just launched, quick plug, we're just launching our new website, and it's been an absolute, although it's the most amount of work I can possibly imagine. The content's all there. We've had 3 or 4 years of just taking photos on our phones and doing little snapshot videos and progressing, making mistakes. And we've just had to just take the time to put it all together and write about it. But the amount of content and interesting story is all there, because it is the distillery and not just a gin brand. The thought of doing it the other way around and going, right, well, it's made by someone else, so how are we going to...
coming up with a name. Would Rupert's be a good name for a gin distiller? Although I think it is.
Yeah,
so,
I do too.
There's 27 other Ruperts. It's going to look a bit fake.
But how we came up with that name, how we landed on Conker, was by that text message. And I've actually, at the time, thank God, did a little screenshot. And now we've just put it into our website as part of our journey. And so people can go onto our journey page and go through every aspect of how we developed, how we came about, and part of that is that.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, and I think that authenticity is key. I worry whether people, they'll hear the story and they'll think, great, I love that, and I worry whether people think about it enough, and actually they go, yeah, I'm always going to buy Conker Gin, and then they go to the supermarket and they just pick up the green bottle because it's deep into their psyche. I really hope that retail's going through a huge shift, isn't it, as we go online, and I think that access to the people behind the brands, the kind of the entrepreneurs, these independents, you didn't used to have that. When I used to go with my dad when I was a kid, and he'd take me to the shop at the weekends. We never thought about who owned, I don't know, wherever I was going for my treat, B&Q or something like that. Whereas now, even on a multinational level, you hear about the people behind Uber and Facebook and all these kind of guys. Even at that level, you feel the owner and their opinion through the web. And I hope some of those guys have been caught out because they're arseholes, not necessarily those ones, but people behind these companies. But if you're genuine,
watch this space.
When Rupert goes off and we see the real Rupert,
crash and burn.
But I think it is about authenticity, isn't it? But I hope people continue to dive a little bit deeper. I worry that that's the niche of people like you and I. This is our day-to-day existence. This is our heartbeat. It's what we live for. We buy from people, not from brands, and consciously make those decisions. But the flip side is, I go on Amazon and I order stuff, but I hope that's commodity orientated, and that where there is a story and where there's genuine individuals behind stuff. I hope that continues. And it's interesting to think that, whilst the internet brings retail to its knees, that actually, your retail, and as you said, you only really exist because of technology and access to market. So hopefully it's just a change, and it's not just about the world becoming dominated. Because although I talk about this humans of hospitality as the antidote to the brands of hospitality, and it comes from a place of concern, but actually I'm very optimistic about it. I just think it's about this. It's about having the conversation. We've been reading websites, and we've got that access to information, and podcasts is just another way of getting into people's headspace and going, just think, please think about what you're going, because let's not make the world dull, and all stay in a Premier Inn for the rest of our lives, because that would be boring.
Yeah, I think we've seen a proliferation of, I think we will see many more independent brands, because there's never been an easier time to access your customer, no matter how niche your product is. You'll be Googled on the other side of the planet, and someone will want your services, and that's brilliant, because it means that little Jimmy, who's going to his through his A-levels or GCSEs, and his careers advisor, hopefully they'll never say those kind of words. You'll never get a job doing that, because it just doesn't hold anymore. So we'll see a lot more. So a good example, the gin, we'll see loads of gins, but there's a lot of wheat for the chaff, there's a lot of, and that's the only problem, is the kind of, if everyone has a route to market and a voice, then there's potentially going to be a lot of, I hope the quality doesn't drop, and then maybe the artisans get a bad name for themselves. I don't know. I'm just literally guessing now. But, so I think, the consumer's choice, like when people go, I'm just going to go to Pizza Hut instead, or I'm just going to go, down the road to some hotel that they can just rely on. And maybe there's that, I wonder if there's ever that fear of quality. And if I'm going to spend this money, I'd rather go for the safe bet than maybe take a punt on 100%. An artisan.
Yeah, because I think those brands are getting better. I look back 13 years ago when we launched Urban Beach, and the big hotels were rubbish. It was great. We were launching a kind of a 5-star hotel, a boutique hotel, only 12 bedrooms, but really good quality. And then the likes of, Premier Inn, they did get better. They've now got the plasma tellies and the Wi-Fi and the decent comfy beds, and they, they don't share our story and our history and our soul and our passion, and they don't have a great kind of cocktail bar and restaurant on site. But in general, if you just want to go somewhere and have a decent kip, they're pretty good. So they do catch up, and I wonder how that trajectory, how do we stay in front? But going back to your point just now, as for other entrepreneurs or kids out there, I do a few talks to schools sometimes, and I'm sure you do the same. But I think that access to information is so exciting. What you could do with your life, your education, business you could set up, your kind of future was controlled by who you knew and money for education. And it's just not the case now, is it? There's your access to the world's information on the phone in your pocket, and that's not just a Western thing. There's people living in huts with no electricity in historic third world, yet they've got access to information in their pockets. It's an exciting time to be alive, I think, isn't it?
We saw that. So I was in Ethiopia in January this year. Right. And we're going up the mountain to these coffee farms. They're literally mud huts, straw roofs, like absolute, what you would class as complete third world. And people sitting on their mobiles. Yeah. Incredible. So, incredibly happy. What we would call sort of, it looks like a challenging life, but the priority is on connectivity and talking to one another on the internet. So, the shift of power will go to the person with the quickest thumbs, I reckon.
Yeah, it's true. That's definitely the kids.
Yeah, exactly. But I lack of knowledge is just no excuse now. If you've got an inkling of an idea or a passion, you've got really. Probably the only thing holding you back is your mindset. Yeah. Because now you can be in a business meeting, smile politely, and then Google what everyone was talking about.
It's true.
And anything, today actually setting up a gin distillery would be immeasurably easier than when I did it. Putting our new website up. I've done some, we've done some Googling tests of keywords and stuff. And you write in gin distillery now, and you've got a YouTube video of how you can set it up. Whereas when I did it, even 4.5 years ago, you could not find that. I had to like buy some gin books and things like that. It's really strange actually to think in that time.
It's incredible, isn't it? The speed of change is insane. But I do, I suppose being entrepreneurs, we're probably deluded optimists, Rupert, and we always think this is a good thing. Equally terrifying, I guess. 2 billion people instantaneously able to communicate. It's the misinformation and the fake news and the bad stuff that can come out of it. But if we would go on that, we'd probably need either gin or beer and another few hours to go on that trajectory. But interesting times. So, kind of continuing that chronological aspect, I guess, here you are 4 years later, from the first ones to now, you've now got a team of people. How different is it, your day-to-day existence now, where it used to be kind of, signing labels and sticking it on the bottle? Do you feel overwhelmed by what you've created, or are you still pretty pragmatic and taking each day as it comes?
Yeah, I think it's funny because your ambition shifts. As I said earlier on, I just wanted to replace my wage, and now I'm thinking, I want to go into export, and I want to, and it grows. Your horizon changes. But with growing, you need to I've become a very good delegator. So when I launched, I controlled everything, and I still control everything now, but just from a kind of arm's length. I've got people who can do things better than I can. So now my role is, building things for the future. So a good example of that would be the RNLI partnership. We've just, that was my idea. I met them a year ago, and I built that relationship and got across the line. That takes time and nurturing and stuff.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I think that's a phenomenal collaboration.
Yeah, it's dreamy. I mean, when I started Conker, I had all these kind of pipe dreams and amazing, and I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if one day we could do something with the RNLI? Because I've grown up on sort of Mudderford Sandbank every summer, surrounded by the RNLI, and it's just been that kind of great brand that I've loved, and it seems very fitting. It's always seemed quite fitting for some reason. Conker and RNLI just seem like a good fit. So a year ago, I just said to them, would you be up for an RNLI Navy strength gin, which contributes £5 on every bottle. And it also is, you can use us as a platform for your messaging, and which is what they're really, although they love the money coming in, they want the audience, they want they want the association with our kind of, through our social media and all that sort of stuff, which is going to be great. We're going to do some videos with them, and, but it's, aside from that, it's an absolutely amazing gin as well. It's really lovely, kind of classic, kind of Plymouth-esque navy. So very bold and juniper, a bit of citrus. And £5 on every bottle. Yeah,
it's amazing. And now when you talk about it, and as soon as I saw it, you got in touch with us a couple of weeks ago, and it just, like you say, it's an instantaneous fit. You just look at it, the branding, how it sits on the bottle, the association between the two, I'm going to say businesses, charity and business. It's one of those, which I think, again, is always the easiest way, or the best stuff is the stuff that just looks like it works and it looks obvious. But yeah, you wouldn't imagine it would be as easy to kind of, to get into a company like that. But I guess it's symbiotic and it works. So when you first went in, did you, was there a few no's first, or was it literally like, Rupert, you're a genius?
It tends to be that way,
with any meeting.
No, there weren't any no's, but they were extremely cautious. One of their big challenges and one of their missions, I suppose, is to take on the problem of drinking and getting into trouble on the water, and they do that by tackling it head on by running campaigns with local pubs that are by the water. So they do these throw line training, and they have some drink aware stuff in pubs, and they partnered with a whiskey a little while back, and they've done this with us, and it's about sort of tackling it head on and actually accessing through kind of responsible premium drinking, I suppose. So they were very keen, but had to kind of go through all the kind of loops and jump through the hoops and the red tape of the big organisation. But the one thing that most made me sort of I suppose one I'm completely surprised by Conker actually was how they saw the value of pairing with Conker. So rather than get them going, sorry, I mean, who are you?
Yeah.
And well, we could go and talk to anyone else. But, we'd go and do one with, Bombay. They'd get a massive audience, but they were like, no, we love what Conker's doing, and we feel a lot of value from reaching your audience. And that makes, that's things, oh, wow, actually, they think we're all right.
Yeah, it's incredible that, I think, isn't it? You always feel, I think, a bit like you're faking it, and you're in
Yeah,
your life,
imposter,
you're that imposter syndrome, which I think most entrepreneurs have. And actually, you hear people at at a fairly senior level. I think everybody's winging it at the end of the day. We're all just
completely.
human beings. We're dealing with whatever comes up. Nobody knows all the answers. And fundamentally, I still think it's about human to human. Whoever you've spoken to the RNLI liked you like them. Even in this tech-driven world, it's why I love hospitality, because fundamentally you get to sit in a room with people. It's not all about the internet. We create spaces for humans to spend time with each other, and it doesn't matter if it's a birthday or an anniversary or a business meeting or even chats like this. I still think we fundamentally crave that kind of, what happens when you're in a room with creative minds and some coffee or some booze and the stories that come out of it. So I really hope that continues.
Yeah, I always say that business looks incredibly intimidating from the outside. So me as a quantity surveyor looking in at entrepreneurs or whatever, I remember thinking, what's the magic? What is it? What do I need to learn? What uni course do I need to do? Or what books do I need to read? And the more you look into it, especially with these very sort of famous entrepreneurs, like, the kind of celebrity entrepreneurs, they just say it's gut decision, it's human relationships, it's basically referral. Business is referral. So as soon as you're one point of contact with one person, you need to make sure that they are then making another 5 connections for you. And so it's just about being able to communicate, and it's not about having all the answers, all the skills.
Yeah, when I talk to the schools now, I'm always like, they ask, what do you look for? What do you look for in an employee? And I'm kind of like, the technology can answer so many questions now. AI is going to answer so many questions. That kind of process-orientated stuff. What I really want, and particularly in our sector, but I think probably just in life, is if you can look somebody in the eye and you can smile and you can articulate your opinion. Just good humans, just be a pleasant human. Everything else, you can wing it, you can learn it, but just learn that. So with the kids. With my kids, it's, it's get out to scouts, it's go camping, it's spend some time outside, it's play a sport, it's just interact with human beings as much as possible. And I think that's hopefully going to remain, an important thing, even as we all sit behind our desks and program stuff on computers. We're still about people. Yeah,
well, that's what I hang my hat on really with Conker. Is like we'll embrace all the technology, but fundamentally, it's that authentic thing you can hold in your hand, and it's just a bit of old school.
Yeah,
and just being, not losing track of the aesthetics of just also being on your own and chilling and staying in and not posting it online. And as much as you want to kind of do the digital, it's all about the gin and tonic basically at the end of the day.
Yeah, our objective is how do we get people out of the digital space and into the physical space. So although we use the internet and we use social media, what I really want to do is I want people to turn it off. I want them to go out and sit around a fire and have a beer or have some cocktails and kind of just hang with each other and turn all the social off. I think it's going to be fascinating to see. I think with our kids, they're probably seeing the negative impact of social media. I think they lose their parents. I think, as adults, we can't cope with social media. We're addicted to it. We're addicted to our phones. We're addicted to tech. I think it'll be fascinating to see if there's a backlash from the kids who kind of grow up and go, well, look, my parents were often gazing into this little screen when I wanted to play football. And hopefully, I certainly try and be really conscious of that and make sure that I'm present and spend time with them. But I wonder if, I guess, it'll be different anyway, because it always is. But it'll be interesting to see if they shy away from that because of the impact.
Yeah. But well, my kids, mine are 2 and 3. So by the time I'm hedging my bets that they'll shut the internet when they're about 16, so I can just relax. They'll just turn it off.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Just press the off button.
It's done. Let's go back to broadsheets and
even
telegrams.
Though my fridge is now connected, and my shoes. There's an app for doing them up. Yeah. Talking about business though, do you ever hear bad recommendations or bad advice? I'm sure people come to you and ask your perspective on how to do stuff. But is there kind of continual stuff where you go, I wish people would stop, sort of putting out that propaganda?
Yeah, well, probably not. But I mean, I think I hear the same stuff come back from people, and that's that, like I touched on earlier on, which is that the risk of taking that leap, and it's actually dissecting that and actually going, what is the risk there? And also that people put out this kind of fear of failure and what if I fail, and that is getting over that is a really crucial step. So there's loads of stuff that I do that I just have to kind of like suck up and go, right, that's not going to work down this road, and with on that failure. So you have it's often the perception of you, isn't it? So the failure is often, well, what will people think if this doesn't go to plan? And actually, when you think about that, if you knew someone who had left their day job to start a new job or to invest all their money and it all went wrong, who in their right mind is going to go, what an idiot?
Yeah.
No one's going to do that. Everyone's going to be like, wow, it's more than I'd do. So actually, when you actually think about it, no one of sane mind would actually think badly of someone who took the punt and it failed. So I love debunking these kind of myths, actually. It's kind of quite liberating because it actually liberates people as well, because people can be stuck doing things. And when you actually take the time to dissect these reasons not to do something, they're often flawed.
I think it seems to be quite a British thing, doesn't it? The Americans have a reputation for being able to embrace failure. And I wonder, I'm a governor at a primary school, and I kind of, look at all the tests and the systems, and hats off to them, like massive respect for the education system and what they achieve with limited resources. But it does go back to that. Are we teaching the wrong stuff, and are we teaching the wrong skills? We're teaching compliance, we're teaching put your hand up if you want to speak, and we're teaching too much ridicule probably if you get things wrong. It's all about passing the test and passing the exam. And you're kind of like, well, actually, could we celebrate failure? Could we come up with a question where 90% of people get it wrong or maybe there isn't even a wrong, there's just perspectives. And I wonder how we change that psyche, because I see kids who are, they're terrified of getting it wrong. They don't put their hands up. They're the kids that retreat and kind of hide from the questions. And again, as an adult, you'd probably go, good on you, fair play for just answering the question. Or at least people like you and I would. And other people might judge and go, oh, you're an idiot. You answered the question wrong. But yeah, I see it in my own kids. It makes me nervous. You want to kind of go, look, just mess up. Just mess up all the time and learn fast. Fail fast, learn fast, move on to the next thing. It'd be nice to know if we could educate that.
Yeah, because you'll always have people putting up and saying the wrong answer from like fact or false, kind of knowledge. It's about how you kind of interpret that sort of getting it wrong and what have you, isn't it? And it would be a culture in business as well. Like I think going forward, this will be just commonplace where the opportunity, being given the opportunity to work on your own things and work on your own projects, because without kind of feeling like you're going to be, failure is going to be frowned upon. Because ultimately the opportunity is in the gaps, isn't it? It's not for like, we don't follow the path of other spirits. Although we get asked for it all the time, and maybe one day we'll have to eat my words. I'm not going to do a rhubarb gin, right, okay. Despite the fact that it would probably made us loads of money, because it's just not. It's not innovation. It's not interesting, and it's so. Instead, we did the coffee liqueur, which is like literally, a UK first. So I think it's about pursuing the gaps. I think it's about not looking actually at a competition and actually looking at what they're not doing. And it's definitely a harder road, and it's definitely lined with failure, but it's way more interesting. And ultimately, there's bigger rewards, I think.
Yeah. And as you've got busier and busier and more opportunities present themselves and more people come to you, is there certain things that you've had to get better at saying no to? Did you used to say yes to everything?
I'm terrible saying no, yeah.
I think that's the problem with an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm a massive yes man. And I think it's put us in good stead. I think it's brilliant, because you never know like the relevance or what you're going to get out of something before you do it. So, we get asked, can you come and do a drinks reception at our club, and there's going to be 12 people there, and you just think, oh my God, I've had a really tough week. But you think, well, just go for it, and then you'll meet someone that will change the course of Conker for the rest of the time. And it's about this not being able to join the dots up looking forward. It's about actually looking back and going, God, if I hadn't done that little event, then we'd never run that bar at that national festival, and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. This is a really good example, right? So when I was in that year of still living in that rented house, giving away bottles because I couldn't sell it, I gave away a bottle to a friend of a friend who she was just in the industry, and my mate said, oh, could you give a bottle to her? And so I gave a bottle to her, and in exchange, because I couldn't take any money, she says, I've got something in exchange for your bottle. And it was a balloon animal of a spider, right? So I posted that on our Facebook page, and it was like, we accept all kinds of currencies.
Brilliant.
Meaningless. I've given away a bottle for a balloon spider, gutted.
Yeah.
But it's just the attitude of like, let's do this, let's make this happen. About 8 months ago, I got a phone call from a number that I didn't recognize on my phone. Picked it up. I said, hello. He said, Rupert? I said, yes. Who's this? And he said, oh, Marco Pierre White.
Brilliant.
And so it turns out she's buddies with Marco Pierre White, and she's made the recommendation to him, and he's called me up.
Wow.
We're now in his 60 franchise restaurants. I had lunch with him the other day. He's given us recently. We've been posting online he's done a review on each of our products that we've been putting online. Just Amazing. A little rant, like mad comments but great comments about our products. And then export, we're looking at Singapore, where he's got like a franchise out there. So, and that all comes from giving away a whole bottle of gin for a balloon animal.
It's not a bad investment, though, is it?
So, and there are a lot of people I can think of in my head who would be like, oh, I can't give any away. It's too precious. You really do have to kind of stop trying to overthink stuff, like you were saying earlier on about overanalyzing it, and just go, let's get the product out there. And you can't, even if you're a solicitor or whatever your profession, if you don't give away a bit of your product for free initially, you'll never convert strangers to customers, because you've got, people have to be converted. You have to kind of turn a stranger into a friend and someone that can trust you. And if you're a solicitor, you do that by taking them out for lunch or doing a few. People do it. They've done it to us, where they do a few jobs on the cheap or for free, and then they've got you for life.
That's true.
But you've got to give away. You've got to give some stuff away to accumulate, I suppose.
Yeah. No, it's a good example. So. Phenomenal journey, phenomenal 4 years. Congrats on what you've achieved. What's next? What are you seeing as Conker's future?
I think of this year, and it's just been massive. And in the last couple of months, I've lined up another massive year for us. Really? Yeah, we've got we've got the 1,000-litre stills that we're going to be getting hold of. So the proper Willy Wonka style bits of kit. We've got another kind of product idea up my sleeve, which will help us reach more people and do kind of really. I want to be known for our innovation, really, and our curiosity and our interest, like meaningful products. Next year is just all about building on what we've done, really. We don't do any export, so I'm going to be pursuing that with a bit more intent this year, next year, because this year's just been. It gets so far, and then you've just got your day job, basically UK stuff to do. So it's endless, really.
And do you think you'll need to seek finance? Have you looked at the kind of crowdfunding thing, or whether could you move faster if you got investment, or is that not really of interest?
It's definitely of interest. We the stuff we've got for next year. So these big stills we'll be doing through like asset finance, but fundamentally we need to. It's so expensive getting yourself known. And particularly as we kind of move to play amongst the bigger players, we found, whereas we might have had a really good inroad to be a gin at an event the last couple of years, we're kind of getting turned around now and people saying, oh, actually, this big brand's paid us X to be here. And we're like, well, okay, we'll step aside. So we're starting to play with the big boys, which is great. Crowdfunding is actually something we're going to look at next year. It might not definitely happen, but it's been in my mind obviously from day dot. But it's just resource and also and for the right reason. I think we've got a really good reason to do it now. I think it's fascinating.
One good thing came out of the recession. It was the change from the concept of having to go to one person for lots of money to go into lots of people for a little bit of money. Yeah. And back with what we were saying earlier about the kind of access to information through technology. Not only have you got the access to the knowledge, you've now got access to money, because there's so many peer-to-peer lending concepts. There still seems to be cash out there in the system, and it's not easy, but it's available, and it's just much more diverse than it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've got that, I want to say funding circle. Is that the one? The business loan? Yeah. A traditional loan, but the money is coming from a pool of individuals rather than the bank.
Yeah. And they get money in your account in 7 days. Not that this is an ad for funding circle, but
we don't do it, but we've definitely looked into it. It's a case of So if you, on paper, back in the day when I was thinking about doing Conker, from a financial perspective, it's not viable.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I didn't have any money to spend, but I did just plow on thinking, there's always money for good ideas. There's always money for good ideas. You see it all the time on the telly, like Dragon's Den. If it's a good idea, someone will give you money for it, even if they have to take a bit of your company. We avoided that, so we didn't have to give. We own all the company because we grew organically. But I definitely would have. Given away X% to have money to make it happen. Because it's means to an end, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And well done for not, because you're probably in a much better negotiation position now. So going forward, it'll be good. Very conscious on time. I could talk to you for another hour. I'd love to go into all the events you do and all the other stuff, but we'll just have to meet up, Rupert.
Yeah, for sure.
Conscious of time. But where can people find out more about you? If they would like to, and even purchase the product.
Yeah, so head to the website. We've just literally today launched the new website, which has a really powerful kind of stockist finder. So you can chuck in your postcode and find all our individual products. And if you're nowhere near those, you can order online. And then as I said earlier on, we've pulled together our story and what we're all about, and really kind of sharpened our pencils to kind of nail down why we're here. And you can read all about that and just tuck into some gin.
Perfect, amazing. Well, thanks again for sparing the time. Your reputation as just being a gentleman of the industry is great as well. So
great.
you have a great reputation, on a personal level as well as for your brand. Yeah. And I love seeing. I think we're so lucky in Dorset and locally that there's so many great guys and girls off developing these little boutique brands. It's a really exciting time. Yeah. And being able to have these conversations and join the journey. And I hope we'll be able to talk again in the future and that it continues to be exciting. But for now, thank you, Rupert of Conker.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, there you have it. That is the conversation with Rupert Holloway. I very much hope you enjoyed it. The website that Rupert was referring to at the end of the conversation there is conkerspirit.co.uk. That's conkerspirit.co.uk. I'll put some more information in the show notes, but please head over to his website and read more and watch a few videos on all that Rupert is up to. We will now be releasing new episodes of the Humans of Hospitality podcast every single week. So please go to your, iTunes or podcast provider of choice. Click on subscribe and hopefully we will automatically appear in your feed. And as I said at the start, any feedback I do want to know. This is early days. I've been thinking about this project for probably about a year. Very excited to finally get on with it. Hope you will share the journey with me, but I would love your feedback. What works well for you, what works less well, what kind of episodes do you want, what length would you want, any kind of subjects, people you'd like me to interview. Please get in touch at Mark Cribb via Twitter and Instagram, or go to humansofhospitality.co.uk website and find the links and more information on there. Okay, thank you so much. Hopefully I will be in your earpieces or on your stereos in a week's time. Thank you.